Hi, it's Seb, here to talk to you about Autobiography of Red by Carson. But first, a preamble. You can see I've got this funky angle going on because it's really dark actually, and I'm trying to maximize the light, so if it feels disorientating, then apologies, but hopefully you can see me at least. I'm just back from a place called Kagoshima, where a long time ago a big volcano erupted and kind of sucked the earth downwards, creating this big circular bay which filled up with seawater, and then sometime later it erupted again, smaller but enough to push up right in the middle of that ocean, like a volcano sticking out of the sea. And Kagoshima is the city that was built on the shore there, so it's kind of like if a child drew a map of a city, you've got your post office, you've got your bank, you've got your volcano island. It's really impressive. It's one of my favorite places in the world. So yeah, I had to go back obviously, and the book I brought with me was this one because I'd already started it and realized that it's very volcano themed, and as you can see from the cover, actually. The cover is, I wish it wasn't red. There's a few covers, there's a few editions, and I think all of them are red bar one, and the one that's not red is the one I like. I feel like if red is in the title, it doesn't need to be the actual cover color. I mean, you can't get away with the vintage classics because they're all red anyways. But anyway, that's very superficial. Let's get into the meat of it. Anne Carson is a Canadian writer who I've wanted to read for ages because she sounds pretty cool and intellectual and artsy, but also does a lot of Greek myth retellings, and obviously takes a lot of inspiration from the classics. So that sounds like it's right up my alley, and this is, I think, maybe her most famous Greek myth retelling. It retells the story of Geryon, the giant, who is killed as one of the labors of Heracles, and that's pretty much the whole story. And at the beginning of it, she talks about her source material, which is an ancient source, Stesichorus. So there's these sections where she's kind of direct, almost like essay form, discussing the work of this ancient poet Stesichorus, and how he did this epic poem, which was about this labor of Heracles to kill the giant or the monster Geryon. And apparently what he did was write it from the point of view of the monster, which is quite unusual. And there's only some fragments of it left, and she provides them for us to kind of read and stimulate our imagination. The fragments are interesting, and they kind of bother me in the way that a lot of free-sounding, modern-sounding translations do, because I really want to know what is the author's or the translator's input and what is the original kind of poet's input, because some of it sounds way too modern, you know what I mean? So I presume she's translated it herself. I don't know if she knows ancient Greek or not, but I presume she has. So I'd like to research. I want to do a lot of research actually after reading this book, and books that make you want to research are always a good thing. But that classical stuff is all kind of a framing device for the actual story. The actual story is a poem. The lines are quite long. Well, sometimes they're short, you can see, but oh no, that's the beginning bit. Look at that, something like that. This is the general, oops, there goes my bookmark. I have so many bookmarks in this book at the moment. But yeah, and the chapters are nice and short. They're written in Roman numerals, like in the old epic poetry. And it says on the back, Autobiography of Red is a modern epic poem. But I don't agree with that at all. Something like Omeros, by Derek Walcott, is a modern epic poem, in my opinion. This is just a modern poem, based on epic poems, drawing inspiration from epic poems, but it's not I don't know. That's a whole other thing, what defines an epic poem. But anyways, yeah, for me, it's just a poem, a modern poem, a narrative poem. It's sometimes it almost feels why is it poetry? Because it feels so much like a narrative. That was one of many little things at the beginning that slightly bothered me. Pretty quickly, you realize you're reading the gay coming-of-age story of Geryon, who, he meets Heracles as an adolescent and falls in love, and then, kind of Heracles leaves, and then it's kind of waiting for Heracles to come back and into his life, and how he develops and matures and uses photography to try and express himself. Also, he's red and has wings, so hence the title. But also it's interesting. It makes it magical realist, I guess, but it's never really referred to that much, so you kind of just forget about the fact that he's all red and has wings. I quite like that, I suppose, because it made it kind of interesting. Because yeah, at the beginning I felt that the gap between the framing of the classical Greek mythology story and then the story that we're hearing which is kind of what she's been inspired to write by the Greek myth, the gap was kind of too big for me. And I mean, I really liked how she led us from one into the other, but then once we got into the gay coming of age story, it kind of just felt like a gay coming of age story, you know what I mean? Which is not a bad thing in and of itself. It was good. It's a good gay coming of age story, but it's not very surprising anymore. And there's also the fact that since this is a retelling, we kind of know from the beginning that Heracles is probably going to kill Geryon at the end. So that provides a kind of narrative tension, I guess, that kind of pushes you forward through all the sort of impressions of Geryon growing up and like feeling alienated from the world. I mean, I do really like the way that she like kind of followed Stesichorus's lead, where you have the original story is the macho hero slaying the monster. Stesichorus kind of gets us inside the monster's head and makes the monster kind of weird and red and strange. And then Carson makes it a kind of modern day gay love story where Geryon is this sort of troubled soft boy and Heracles is the more masculine, active, like sweep you off your feet kind of guy who kind of like instigates Geryon's adulthood, you know what I mean? In the way that like love stories often are about how one character leads another into developing into the person that they're going to be for the rest of their life. So I guess that kind of tropiness of romance, like kind of the way that we get there from the myth, which is actually about like murdering somebody, is quite interesting and like kind of conceptually pleasing. And I have found actually that a lot of the complaints I had fell away as I got into it, and the second half really picked up for me. Like it has this trope, I don't know if it's a trope, it's a plot device, I guess, where suddenly the main character just travels, just leaves and goes away to a different country. Every time that happens in a book, I'm always happy. Like I always love it when people just get up and go somewhere. Don't know if that says more about me than anything else, but like I really like that when that happens. I always find it really interesting. It kind of like derails wherever you were and like kind of makes you engage with the text in a fresh way. And he goes to Argentina, and now he's in Peru. I actually haven't finished the book. I've got 10 more pages to go, but you know, lots of books speed up as they get towards the end and they get towards the climax. This one actually slows down, and I'm completely here for that. Like the way it's slowing down, and it's in Peru, which was totally unexpected. I'm half Peruvian, so it's kind of nice. Although I don't really recognize the Lima that she describes, but I feel like it's set in the 80s maybe or something like that. So I feel like it's a kind of different Lima from the one that I know. But yeah, he's just traveling around South America now, and the plot has slowed to a crawl, and I'm enjoying it so much that even though I've only got 10 more pages, I just want to savor them. I don't want to read them right now, so I'm just going to like leave it for a bit. I like Geryon being in Peru, and maybe he'll die at the end of it as well, so I kind of want to give him a little bit of a extended lease of life. I think as I got into it more, I started appreciating the poetry a bit more. Like listen to this bit from when he's in Argentina. "Tango is not for everyone," she said. Geryon did not hear. The cold pressure of the concrete wall against his back had tumbled him into a recollection. He was at a Saturday night high school dance. Basketball nets cast their stretchy shadows high up the walls of the gym. Hours of music had crashed on his ears while he stood at the wall with his back pressed against cold concrete. Jolts from the stage threw lit strips of human limbs across the dark. Heat bloomed. Black night sky weighed starlessly on the windows. That's an example like where I think it really works, the balance between narrative and poem. You know what I mean? Like kind of it feels like prose when you start. Like it's just kind of conversational, and it, like you can't really hear the line breaks. It feels like a paragraph. But then as we get into the memory, the language starts to get a bit more colorful and strange. We get some unusual images and diction, and then like that last black night sky weighed starlessly on the windows. I love that line, and I wouldn't love it, I think, if it hadn't had the narrative build up. I really actually am interested in the ways that prose and poetry can play off of each other. There's a few things that I've read like that where it works really well, but it's not so common, I think. So in this case, it hasn't been like this all the way through the book, but towards the end I'm finding more and more like I'm appreciating that kind of form that she chose to use. Also, yeah, I didn't mention the volcano thing. I gave you the whole Kagoshima opening, but I didn't tell you anything about the volcano. She has a poetry extract, poem by Emily Dickinson at the beginning, which is a very good poem. I've never heard it, but like it's about a volcano, and the image of the volcano keeps coming up throughout the book. It's kind of haunting Geryon, and it's just appeared again in Latin America as well. So like I mean, what the volcano is and what it represents, you know, for Geryon and for Heracles is interesting, I guess. It's like something that could be talked about for a long time, so I'm not going to go into it now because it's also like kind of a little bit strange and mystical without like obvious answers. But yeah, that was something that did bother me a bit at the beginning, that I felt like that this is kind of like more Emily Dickinson inspired fiction than Greek myth inspired fiction, based on the example of Stesichorus that she gives here, which is fine, I guess. But I'm like really into Greek myths, so I wanted more of the Greek stuff. But now I've kind of started to accept it for what it is, so that every time something to do with Greek myths does kind of like explode a little bit out of the text, then I'm kind of surprised. I'm like, oh yeah, but then I forget about it and I go back into just Geryon's story of interior development. I guess when it comes to Greek myth retellings, if there's a spectrum from Madeline Miller to Anne Carson, then my perfect Greek myth retelling book would be somewhere like right in the middle. You know what I mean? Like something that's probably still set in the time period and like has the characters as they were in the story and has like that kind of narrative focus, but also gets onto like some really like interesting, like I wouldn't say necessarily experimental, but like artistically challenging and aesthetically unusual, like kind of modes of telling the story. As well as philosophical, I guess, is the right word for this book. Something that's kind of like quite meaty and strange is always appreciated. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with this because I tried reading a bit of Anne Carson before, actually. Like she did some comics. I don't know if she actually drew them herself or somebody else did, but some like I just in the bookshop I saw the Women of Troy by Euripides, and she did a version of it, like a comic strip, and I started reading it. It didn't work for me at all. I guess it was like the modern language and like some of the kind of strangeness of it. I didn't see how it, illuminated or enlightened or like kind of did anything with the original play, except for like the basic story and the characters are being, represented there. But like I didn't see what it brought to the table, And at first when I read this, I started to feel it might be a similar thing. But basically I've changed my mind. It's gotten really good. And at the end, there's some other Stesichorus bits, I think. Yeah, it says interview Stesichorus. So I'm kind of interested to see how the framing device closes the story as well. Like how much she brings us back into the world of Greek mythology and away from this like coming of age love story. Or if she manages to like merge the two together in some like impressive finale, that would be cool as well. But we'll see what happens. So yeah, I can't give a final verdict because I haven't finished the last few pages, but it does feel kind of like a classic now. Like maybe not one of my all-time favorites or anything like that, but the character of Geryon is, I guess, going to stay with me, and his relationship with Heracles. Like I don't know, like now that it's in the ending, it's so fun. Like it was kind of lacking a bit of fun I think at the beginning, but Heracles like runs in saying hombres, and like he's just really like you could imagine Heracles from the myth being if he was like a modern day guy in his early 20s. But yeah, let me know if you've read this book or anything else by Anne Carson, what you thought, or if you're interested now, or if you have any other favorite like volcano fiction, then yeah, throw it my way. Or that like kind of holy grail of Greek myth retellings, which would be like right between Anne Carson and Madeline Miller. If you know that, then yeah, let me know because I want to read it. Happy reading, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.